Hello everyone, welcome to the second Adventure devlog. If you're new here, let me catch you up quickly. Adventure is an action-adventure platformer about Andy, a little ant who, after fleeing from their home, has to rescue their family. Last time, we talked about the beginning of the project and said how we use a different animation system now. Andy is now animated using bones, which can bend the sprite using their position and rotation. Look for example at Andy's legs here. Another system in place is called IK, or Inverse Kinematics. It means that I can move this dot and the two joints Andy's leg is constructed from move accordingly. It is helpful when animating because you have to manage one point instead of two bones. Another thing we showed off in the first episode is sound effects. We implemented them now. There is now an implementation for walking sounds on different surfaces, ambient sounds, and weather sounds. We will add more sound effects as we add more features, and everything will have its own sounds. Let's talk a bit about the implementation. In Unity, you can play sounds using the audio source component. It takes an audio clip object, like an audio file, and exposes a play method. For surface-related sounds, we have a custom surface component. It uses scriptable objects to remember what its material should sound like. Scriptable objects are highly customizable assets. In our case, they contain a list of sounds that the given material should emit when interacted with in different manners. But what would be a sound system with step sounds without anything to step on? That's why we introduced to you Timber Hall, the first location in Adventure. It features dirt, grass, clovers, stalls, water, and trash, which I promise makes sense in the lore. You may also notice an outlier or three. These stalls and this trash pile have a different style than other textures. Textures like this are called programmer art. They are helpful when programmers want to implement a feature, but artists haven't made the official textures yet. For the terrain, we have 17 textures of just dirt to account for nearly every combination of angles and connections. When we were talking about the ground in its early stages, we considered using tile maps. It's a grid of tiles that, in case of Unity, can even change textures depending on the surrounding tiles. We didn't pick it because using just textured rectangles allows for smoother terrain and more freedom in forming it. Filling the inside of the terrain was very easy. We used a system called Sprite Shape for that. It adds a new component. When you put it on an object, you can use the scene view to see the points that describe the shape you're drawing. In our case, I have moved them to roughly match the shape of the dirt textures, and Kuba made it so you can't even see the transition. Having just dirt would be boring for a location like that. That's why we have 37 textures of various plants. Aside from the big tree in the background, we placed grass, clover flowers, and clover leaves. While walking around, you can see a parallax effect, which means that elements further away move slower, and the ones closer to the camera move faster. We achieved it using a perspective camera instead of an orthographic one, and placing the sprites on different values along the third axis. They don't look very lively on normal static sprites, so I've made a wind shader to fix that. It uses Perlin noise to generate a new random position for each vertex of our texture squad in every frame. And because of the properties of this specific kind of noise, it smoothly floats from one position to another. The last element of this environmental puzzle are these blurred foreground plants. At first, I used a shader to blur the sprites. That, however, caused some textures to be trimmed, and it was computationally expensive, cutting the frame rate in half. That's why I built a script that takes the selected sprites and with just a click of a button copies them to a separate folder and blurs them there. With this method, textures are blurred only once and displayed as a normal sprite with just the wind shader. And that is it for this devlog. Thank you very much for watching. Comment what you think about today's changes and subscribe to get notified about upcoming devlogs. Now you can click on the next devlog on the left if it's ready, and the playlist on the right to see the whole series.